Hello, my name is Brian Cushing. I'm the program director here at Locust Grove.
And I'm Alan Bishop. I'm the distiller at Spirits of French Lick and also occasional distiller here at Locust Grove.
So if you saw a video we did last year with folks over at Townsend's, we were doing a historic brandy making experiment. And so brandy, we kind of teased out the story of it a little bit during that video. Alan, in his actual distilling job, has also done a recreated version of a 19th century brandy that you can also buy. So he's going to tell us a little bit about that process and where we're at historically.
Right, yeah, so we actually distill what we call Old Clifty Hoosier Apple Brandy at Spirits of French Lick, and then here at Locust Grove we did the small mini distillation based on historic principles. So in that time period, we were talking, late 1700s, early 1800s, a lot of very primitive double pot still distillation. We talked about apple mash brandy versus apple juice brandy, obviously, but what we didn't get into is the time period that we're into today, which would be the 1860s. So by 1862, you obviously have, civil wars going on, looking for a way to pay for that, looking for a way to take care of that. And one of the ways they did that was by implementing the excise tax. And they were a little harder on small farm distillers than they were big guys, believe it or not, because the tax structure was a little bit different. So the big guys got taxed based on what they were actually making, and the little guys got taxed more or less on what they could make. Wow. So a lot of them went underground. Of course, leading back up into a little later on Prohibition, 1920s, etc. So what we're going to do today is we're going to play around with this apple brandy and some cocktails. This is a double pot distilled, non-chill filtered apple brandy, so it's full of flavor. All the flavor of those apples is there, and that's exactly what you want out of an apple brandy. You want it to be a representation of summer in a bottle, basically. So
what would you say that Prohibition kind of did to the brandy landscape in this region?
It certainly crippled it in major ways. They were already crippled anyways because it's such an agricultural sort of endeavor that anything goes wrong whatsoever and they might lose a season, right?
Right.
But then when the tax comes in, the tax man says, all right, you've got a 40-gallon still. If you ran it twice a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, this is what you could make. And that's what we're going to tax you based on.
Wow.
A lot of them either get out of the business or they turn to doing it illegally. So they go underground. We know that a lot of the farm distillers in northern Kentucky, southern Indiana, were also falsely reporting how much they were actually distilling. So we know that on average they were somewhere between 3 and 1,200 barrels per distillery, but you can pretty much multiply that by 3 and have a better idea of what was actually being produced without being taxed. So,
gotcha. So we think, I love bourbon. We think about bourbon in this region, but brandy before Prohibition was just as much part of the spirit landscape. So we did the brandy project with Townsend's. Alan made this brandy, which got me really excited, wondering, okay, now what do we do with it? But we can just drink it. It's wonderful that way. But I decided to turn to Jerry Thomas's Bartender's Guide. This was published in 1862, the same year as the excise tax that Alan was talking about. And so I wanted to see a little bit of what Jerry Thomas might have been doing with brandy back in these days. And you hear a whole lot about how difficult this is to interpret, but really, if you're used to working with historic recipes, it really clicks pretty well. There's still some interpretation that you need to do, but I didn't find it to be that bad. So the recipe that we're going to try today is called the Brandy Sangaree, and the ingredients are pretty simple. We've got a couple of glasses here. We're going to start with a teaspoon of sugar, and we're just going to use regular white granulated sugar today. And it calls for half a wine glass of water. And now this isn't like a modern wine glass. This is an 1860s wine glass. Okay, this comes in right at 2 ounces. I have a few of my own. The smallest one I've got is from a little bit later and comes in an ounce and a half. Almost all of them come in at about 2 ounces. So we're going to do just about a half a wine glass of the water, and it is important that you do this step first before anything else because you want that sugar to dissolve in the water, and if you get the spirit in there before the sugar, you're going to have some problems with it. Hey, you're going to have some problems with the dissolving. So we're going to get that sugar kind of dissolved.
feels like they use those small glasses just so they could remind themselves that they were actually drinking.
Yeah. You can refill them as many times as you want.
Yeah, you just keep a score sheet, right?
Right.
Tally it up as you go.
You might not want to know.
Right. Or, you gotta imagine that people who don't understand the Jerry Thomas book, it's because they've not sat down with a glass and drank with Jerry Thomas.
That's a good point too. Okay, so the next thing we do is we're going to fill these glasses up a little bit about 2/3, give or take, with ice. I'm gonna use my fingers.
That's a professional. Got a little bit of character.
Right. We're gonna put something in there to sanitize it. Okay, now here's the good part. We're gonna do a wine glass of brandy. And since it's a wine glass, I mean, this is a little bit more, a lot of cocktails you see nowadays call for 2 ounces, and so it really starts to make sense when you see that in this context.
It is a 90 proof brandy as well, so it's got a little octane to it. It won't fix your problems, it'll make you forget about them for a minute, perhaps.
Okay, so we got our brandy in there. We're gonna mix them up. And here's kind of the neat part, I think. We're gonna take a tablespoon or a teaspoon of port. We're not gonna mix it. We're just gonna drop it over the top. And it kind of filters down through the drink really nicely, and it gives it a kind of a velvety character.
Very nice.
And this is for you, John Townsend. We're gonna nutmeg it.
Gotta do nutmeg. Somewhere right now, John knows that this is happening, and he's smiling.
Okay, so this is our 1862 Brandy Sangaree with the Old Clifty apple brandy that Alan made. So, let's see how they are.
Salute. I believe that'll do it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of velvety?
That's right. And that apple really comes through. That nice little wine is in there as well. It's a nice little balance.
It's almost like the por's just kind of swirling through the brandy when you drink it.
Yeah. Yeah, it almost tastes, like if you were to finish an apple brandy in a porter barrel sort of thing. So
Is that on the agenda?
it is now.
Very good.